like never before.
Many thanks for staying with us on World Now. It's D-Day. Donald Trump is being inaugurated as 47th President of the United States today, alongside his vice, J.D. Vance. With me in the studio today is my colleague, senior correspondent and presenter, Solomon Ajuziogu. Solomon, it's good to have you with me in the studio.
Thanks for having me.
I remember the backroom conversations we had about, the incoming Trump administration and the fact that the D-Day now is here. How does it feel knowing that Trump is coming back to the White House?
It's rather amazing and funny, there is something people didn't pay a lot of attention to the first time when he came. When the FIFA team, the FIFA football team, visited the United States because they are going to host the 2026 World Cup along with Canada and Mexico. So that's a continental hosting of the World Cup, as it were, for the first time. And Trump, who was then seeking to get a second term, which would have run from 2020 to 2024, made a statement. I don't know why he made that statement. He said, 2026, I should have finished my term in 2024, but I'll be there in 2026.
Speaking prophetically.
I mean, he just spoke like that. And here we are. He didn't get the second term successively, but he's getting a second term after 4 years. And prophetically, he's going to be in charge, hopefully, God keeping him alive, to be there when the United States, Canada, and Mexico host the 2026 World Cup.
But we do hope that he gives all of the support needed,
considering he's already talked about it.
Because considering some of the points he made during COVID and the fact that the U.S. had to reduce, their commitment to the world body and all that.
Well, yesterday at the rally, at the victory rally, he talked about the World Cup. He's expecting it. He wants to see it happen. He's so excited that he's going to be in charge when it happens. He's also excited that he will be the president when America is celebrating 250 years of nationhood and of democracy. So there is a whole lot tied to the Trump presidency, and it's important. It's a presidency that has come at certain milestone times in the history of America. They will be hosting the World Cup. They'll be celebrating 250 years of nationhood. And then it seems more like an ideological rejuvenation. There is a sort of restoration of what America always stood for, a cutaway from much more liberal policies, a reclining towards America itself, because they feel that some of the people, especially the Republicans, have always felt that America has done too much outside America and that infrastructure within America is collapsing. And that is the whole idea of the America First thing in the first place.
All right. And of course, the church service is on. that would precede the taking the oath of office, at the rotunda there in the Capitol. Let's talk about some of the events that would, lead into that. And quite uniquely, this event is holding indoors.
Yes.
Another milestone. Well, it happened in the past, but...
It happened in 1985. Yeah. And, there is a bit of similarity in the character of the two persons. Ronald Reagan, an actor, a former actor, and Trump, who is also an impresario of some sort, entertainment impresario, an actor, he into real estate, so many things. So he's also a celeb, like Ronald Reagan. Then the thing is, there are so many things also tied around this. Well, the first thing will be the weather. The United States, Washington, D.C. at this moment is going through a massive snowstorm. That it will be dangerous to keep people outside in that amount of snow to be part of the celebration. Then there's also the point of security around this. That there's been almost like 2 attempts on Donald Trump and all of that. So, with the way the whole thing has come up and the security situation in America, the porous border, the porous southern border, and the fears of those who might have come into the country, it's important first for the weather and for security to hold it indoors for now it's a bit of the sensitivity about some of the issues happening around the United States of America.
All right, and counting down to midday in the U.S., in Washington, when this will take place, I think they're about 6 hours.
Yes, Washington, the Eastern Board.
Yeah, 6 hours behind us. Let's talk about some of the events that, some of the things that would take place before the actual swearing in.
Well, right now, a lot of people, I think that if Washington was a country, if Washington, D.C. was a country,
yes,
they will be smiling to the bank at the moment because tourists have, swooped on Washington. And you would also imagine that January 6, 2021 was when people came, and that was another story altogether,
yes, about
insurrection. But this time, people have come the way they came on January 6th. They've also trooped to Washington, D.C., but this time for celebration and not to try to stop a mandate, as it were. So it's a beautiful thing for a lot of Americans because this is a sweeping mandate by an American president. Who won the college vote, who won the popular vote, who has the majority in the House of Representatives, who has a majority in the Senate. I mean, you can't have it better than that. And this is like a president who has come prepared for exactly what he wants to do. Immediately he's sworn in, he's ready to sign 200 executive
Solomon,
bills.
That is massive. Okay, we have some live pictures. We have some live pictures where Donald Trump just left St. John's Church, where the church service held ahead of the swearing-in ceremony. There he is, approaching the car. He's getting into the car now. Yes, seated right in the car. The door is shut.
I think that the beautiful thing about the Trump administration is that he has made no pretense about religion. He has made no pretense about resisting the shutting down of people's faith liberty. That's what they call it in the US, the liberty of faith, the liberty to worship and all of that. And so they will make an open show of the fact that, look, you are free to worship whoever, whatever you want to worship, and you cannot force your religion on any other person. And I think that he's making this sort of statement with this sort of inauguration church service to usher him into power and all of that.
Yeah.
But one beautiful thing for us is also that our own people are there. People like Nathaniel Bassey, who are, part of this in the celebration.
Yeah.
It shows that Nigeria is exporting something good. So it's not just Nigerian politicians who will be invited, or maybe a Nigerian president, but Nigerian entertainers, Nigerian gospel singers, Nigerian preachers have been invited to this place. So it's a good thing for us. It's something that we are keying into, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it because I have looked forward to a day like this when Donald J. Trump, despite all the demonization and the things that people said about him, and this is a man that a lot of people outside the United States don't have a proper history of him and his family. People don't know that that's a family of geniuses. His uncle, John, was the one who took the inquiry, the commission of inquiry into Nikola Tesla's inventions, some of his dark mysteries surrounding Nikola Tesla and the electric vehicles or electric currents and all of that. So in that family, it's a very powerful, a very strong family, and people have spent so much time demonizing Donald because of his style.
So Solomon, we hope to see some, ingenious policies and inventions, during Trump's
You've already seen it even before he's sworn in.
All right.
The ceasefire in Gaza is because of his intervention. Some of the issues surrounding Ukraine at the moment, countries around the world are listening because, look, they feel that this is the one president they can respect, a president who says a thing and follows it through. And so the whole world is standing at attention. Some really scared of of his whole.
But you know, some of those policies are actually ambiguous, because talking about Russia, Ukraine, for instance, some say that, okay, this is a stance that would make Ukraine appear like they are, you know, just stepping aside rather than, you know, firing on all cylinders. But that's not what we're talking about, Solomon. So let's get straight to the inauguration proper. Earlier, we're talking about Donald Trump's plans to sign about 100 executive orders on day one. That's quite massive. It's like history, you know, is being made. But then let's look at how some of these policies could affect us as Africans.
Yes, so one of the things that Donald Trump did in the first term was fracking, the drilling thing, which he says he's going to resume. And that will have very serious implications for the economies of the world, especially oil-producing countries. America has one of the biggest, one of the largest oil reserves, which they decided that they were not going to touch it. And then America had been in the forefront, under the liberals, had been in the forefront of, you know, lowering fossil fuel, the utilization of fossil fuel, and then going into alternative energy. But Donald Trump says, no, you're not going to destroy a lot of industries. You're not going to give mandate for those things. You are going to allow inventions. You are going to allow the free market determining those things. And as far as America is, Donald Trump is concerned, America has to be an oil independent. America does not have to depend on Russia or anybody. America has oil. So let us drill the oil. Once power energy, the cost of energy is lower because you have surplus of it, then prices of goods, prices of everything will come down, because Americans are paying over the odds at the moment for the things that they need, for the basic things of life. And so he feels it's all down to energy. Once you can bring down the price of energy, everything goes down. And so the implication of this will be that America begins to drill oil. America is one of the biggest consumers of oil around the world. And once America begins to drill its own oil, it will not have to buy from OPEC a lot. And so the price, the demand for oil will drop. And so that has very serious implications for us. And that is why, as a country, we need to step up on alternative to oil. We need to go back to the farms. We need to go back to the extractive industry. What Dele Alake is doing, for instance, in solid minerals, they have to step it up. Nigerians need to buy into this. The northern countries where solid minerals are.
Trump, we have some, you know, live pictures now. Donald Trump and his team there leaving to the White House, where the inauguration will take place at midday there in Washington, D.C. in the United States. The church service has just ended and they are on their way to the White House. We're counting down to the final minutes. The day is here, and very soon it will be President Donald J. Trump.
Well, I just wonder how nice it sounds to say President-elect at this time. You know,
because there are already activities, you know, leading into the actual thing.
But then you were talking about the implication of some of his policies. So we talked about oil.
Yeah.
The effect it's going to have on, you know, world economy. In fact, so it's not only Nigeria that this is going to affect, but most oil-producing countries. So if you have been very slow and very backwards in your, any country that has been very backward in, you know, looking for alternative, you know, economy, they are going to have a very hard time in the 4 years of Donald Trump. And then the implication for climate change around the world, climate change issues around the world. The United States has always been, you know, the driver of this. But Trump is saying, look, this is not the way we are going to approach it. We are not going to approach it the way we've been approaching. And don't forget that our president had said things surrounding climate change, that while we are going to conform with the rest of the world in energy efficiency and the seeking of alternative energy.
Solomon, can you hold your thoughts? That's the procession there to the White House. Donald J. Trump to be sworn in as 47th President of the United States alongside his vice, J.D. Vance, who will be the 50th Vice President of the U.S. Of course, they'll be taking over from Democrat Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris vied in that election against Donald Trump. But of course, victory went the way of the Republicans. And Donald Trump is today being sworn in, this time indoors because of concerns about harsh weather in Washington, D.C., where the inauguration is taking place. But of course, he's promised that when he steps out after that inauguration, he would speak to people who are gathered around to celebrate with him on his return to the White House. And quite importantly also, he's mentioned that about 100 executive orders will be signed on day one, from immigration to energy. Several policies is looking at. The TikTok ban is also there, delaying the implementation of the ban, and looking at, a divestment deal where about 50% is owned by Americans in that deal, that alongside other issues. And some of those would actually require legislation, and we'll wait to see how Congress, attends to some of these matters. Like pictures there from Washington, D.C. Solomon, we're talking about, impact, oil divestment.
Yeah. Well, you raised the issue of the TikTok matter.
But, yeah.
So you have a man who the mainstream media had always sort of been against him.
When is it being against him?
Yes.
The media is supposed to be apolitical. The media is supposed to be unbiased, balanced, fair, objective, accurate. So are you saying that a section of the media hasn't been promoting, these ethics of the profession?
I think that the issue of some of the issues you raised about media are things that are more of impersonality. They are theoretical in their highest dimensions, because media houses and people who operate within the media have leanings. The media as an object, as a technological implement, is inanimate, so it doesn't have biases. But the people who operate within there are human beings. And there are things that guide the operation of the media. There are ideological philosophies that guide the operation of media houses and media empires. There are objectives that each media organization pursue. And so most media houses in the United States, for instance, are liberal, where a few are conservative. One of the things that Trump had against him is that the liberal media had not been very, very friendly with his policies, with what he always stood for. Now, the challenge there is if someone, a politician, comes up with an ideology that is not in tandem with the ideological philosophy that drives your media house, you are not going to support. No matter how much you talk about not being biased, you will report their event, but the analysis and the way you present them will certainly bring attention to the fact that, look, this is where this person leans, this is where this person leans. And so those differentiations will always happen. And so the online media, the internet media, played a very significant role in the emergence of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, don't forget, had created a lot of problems for TikTok in his first term. But suddenly he's having a U-turn now, because TikTok, the YouTube channels, all the things you have on the internet played a significant role in trying to help him create balance against the mainstream media during this last campaign. It worked for him, and he feels, okay, there's something going on here. This is the democratization of the media space. And so if the internet could help with the democratization of the media space, then we can have a rethink. What he's doing with TikTok is basically what any country will do.
Solomon, please, we understand that J.D. Vance there has arrived at the White House alongside his wife there. They're making their way, they would make their way in now ahead of that inauguration. J.D. Vance will be the 50th Vice President of the United States. All right, and they're alongside, I think that's Kamala Harris with the first gentleman.
Yeah.
The second gentleman, actually, it's a mix.
With her husband.
Okay, with her husband. Okay, that's better. And of course, the paparazzi over there Okay, that's for the photo ops, all smiles, soaking it all in. Okay, and then the real work will begin after noon. Yes, we're talking about TikTok and talking about the fact that Donald Trump appears to have made a U-turn on his decision or the squabbles he's had with TikTok in the past. And that makes me curious about, another issue, whether this plan for a delay in implementing the law banning TikTok in the U.S. it's actually in the overwhelming interest of Americans, or simply because he's benefited from it, and if it's okay, let me give back.
Now, the real issue why he had problems with TikTok was because of China. Now, every company that is from China is owned by the Chinese state. Forget that there are Chinese companies in Nigeria spearheaded by individuals. The money behind these Chinese companies are government finances. And so the Communist Party owns most of these things because everything is centrally planned by the Chinese government. But then the Chinese government has a philosophy, and this philosophy is that one country and multiple ideologies, multiple approaches, but it has not changed the fact that the superstructure is communism. And so you have TikTok, you have WeChat, you have Weibo, you have Techno, you have whatever you call them, Lucent, all of them, you have Tencent, the Alibaba thing. These companies belong to the Chinese government. And so the problem Trump had with this in his first time was that, look, they were using these things to gather data about America, about Americans, and all of that. And this was the problem, that this is state-run company, technological company. They are not privately run companies, that they are state-run companies. And so the only way you can allow, that the Americans would allow you to continue here is that we need proof that, one, this is privately run, this is, individual businesses, and if they are not, what is the assurance that there is no security breach with these things? And that's what America wants to do, because it's the same thing the Chinese will do if you are going to China. It's the same thing most countries that are deliberate will do.
When you talk about deliberate, because I'm just thinking about some other countries where these apps just filter in, you just find, oh, I'm on TikTok, I've got this new TikTok video. There are really no regulations.
But you forget that Nigeria did that with Twitter.
But
because they came in and we allowed all of those things. Then when the problem came, then we realized that these were the things we were supposed to do. This is what every responsible country will do, every responsible government will do to protect the country's territory, to protect the people from what we call subversions, and all of that, from a threat to national security and all of that. And so what the Americans are demanding is, and what Donald Trump wants to do now, okay, we've benefited from this, but the rules must be followed. And these rules will be, I'll give you a 90-day moratorium where you can then sit down and discuss about the modalities of ownership, where the Chinese government will have to divest, and then maybe even if they are not divesting in its entirety, we have a situation where maybe 50% or a controlling share is domiciled in the United States of America, which is a normal thing. Even if you are doing privatization, you are bringing foreign direct investment, your companies are registered in partnership with the locals of that place. Now, those things have effect. For security reasons, depending on the sector of the economy in which you are coming in, and then for the prevention of capital flight. This also has economic benefits and all of that. So the Americans want to feel safe. Donald Trump feels, okay, we are not going to ban, I don't want to ban TikTok if we can reach this agreement. And there will be no need to ban TikTok if that agreement could be reached. And I'm sure that the Joe Biden administration wouldn't have also moved for the banning of TikTok if those agreements could be met. I mean, it's going to be more like a win-win for everybody. The Chinese will then sit down with them. The Americans will sit down. They will reach an agreement, which is essentially what Trump tries to do. Every time he says the things he says, oh, we are going to take over the Suez Canal, we want to take over Greenland, he forces you into a negotiation. It's the threat.
Okay, because, Solomon, on Sunday, social media was really a buzz where people complained, oh, I woke up today, I just realized I couldn't do anything on TikTok, only to realize, oh yes, I have been, like it's been suspended temporarily in the United States. But here we are, so that's some hopeful. So if you're in the US and you're a TikTok user, some good news coming your way because Donald Trump has something.
But incidentally, the alternative app that people choose was also Chinese.
That is it. So they've taken over the technological space. Who will be the competitors now?
and so this is part of the America First thing.
Okay.
That America has exported so much of this technological know-how to China especially. And so it's hurting American companies.
When you talk about export, how do they move it there? You mean, okay, the Chinese going to the US to...
No. So this is what it is. So every time you hear technological transfer, nobody willingly gives you technology. Because once they give you that technology, what happens here is that it erodes their comparative advantage. And so what the Americans did, which Americans had the freedom to do that anyway, was that there was cheap labor, there was cheap costs in China. Most American companies moved away from America and went to set up factories in China. China created an environment that allowed these foreign companies, these technological companies, to come to China to get free labor, to get free costs, cheaper costs, cheaper labor, and all of that. And they came there to set up their stuff, and then they were able to produce cheaper things, and then export it around the world. And so that's what grew China basically, and that's how the Chinese also became, very powerful in all of these things. And then the competition has gotten so strong that in America, every time you go America, you enter into a shop in America, you want to buy a car, it's a Chinese car, you want to buy this, it's China, and there's hardly made in America anymore. And Trump is saying, no, we can't continue like this because it's against the American interest. It means the Americans are not benefiting. And he did a great deal of that between 2016 and 2020. There was so much revival of American industries. Some of the companies returned home. There was stimulation, of the economy for that 4 years until Biden came again, and it seems they lost focus again. And now he has not even assumed the mantle of leadership. And what's happening? You could see the markets reacting. You could see the corporate world also reacting to that. You could see even on the diplomatic scene, you can see some of the things happening. And all of that.
Yeah, but when you talk about Biden, for instance, losing focus, there are those who will tell you that's not what exactly happened. They prospered in the thing they prospered in, and probably didn't do too magnificently in the other things that people really wanted them to perform in and on. But let's look at another policy. Of course,
but the people spoke, and that is the reflection of how badly they performed.
So is this not about the party, about the candidates? Remember, it was Joe Biden, and now it's Kamala Harris.
No, it was purely about party performance. The people who were in charge performed badly, and the people were unanimous in making the decision to vote against them because they performed badly.
Okay, another 4 years is around the corner. We'll see, how it plays out again. Another major, topic of discussion in the U.S., especially as Donald Trump comes in, is immigration. Talk about the wall, the Great Wall. It's coming up again, no illegal immigrants. This really has divided a lot of people because some say that, Donald Trump is just against immigrants. But he tells you, no, I'm not against immigrants. I'm against illegal immigration into the U.S. You've got something to say about this?
You see, these things are about framing, about how media frames things, okay? So Kamala Harris, during the electioneering campaign, was framed as, at some point a favorite, at some point was neck to neck. And I can tell you for free, as someone who has monitored politics, who had been involved in politics myself, that I could see between the lines, and I realized that it was not close at all. It was just the media making the noise that they were making, framing, because they had a favorite candidate. Now, what you have in the United States, I've always noticed something, that even though as brash as Donald Trump sounds, he has never been known to speak idly. He's not an idle man. He doesn't speak idle words. I remember during COVID, and he was talking about hydroxychloroquine. And then,
all right, Solomon, please hold your thoughts. Okay, we've got some live pictures on the screen now. On the left there, you have images of supporters Friends, loyalists of Donald Trump, of course, by their cap, you'll know them, is the popular red cap, MAGA, Make America Great Again, and for which Republicans and conservatives are actually known. On the other side, there you have a picture of the White House getting ready for the arrival of Donald J. Trump, who will be sworn in as the 47th president. Remember earlier, we saw Senator J.D. Vance, who now Vice President J.D. Vance, who arrived alongside his partner there, and then they met with Kamala Harris, her partner as well, getting ready for the inauguration. Yes, of course, pictures of arrivals there at the Capitol. All right, arrivals there. More people walking in. This should be guests who are witnessing the ceremony. Quite unfortunately, this event would have fewer people than expected or than projected, and that's as a result of the harsh weather, which has prompted the moving of the inauguration to hold indoors. It would have been held outdoors with, of course, many people attending to be a part of it. All right, live pictures there from Washington, D.C. This is the White House. The president-elect, or the incoming president, Donald Trump, has actually arrived alongside his wife, Melania, his daughter, Ivanka, her partner, and other members of his family. They were getting ready for the swearing-in ceremony. Of course, also the vice president-elect, J.D. Vance, is also in attendance with his partner, and earlier we showed you pictures of well-wishers arriving for that ceremony. We'll be bringing you live pictures as the event unfolds there in Washington, D.C. And of course, pictures here showing you the streets, some passers-by, people who've gathered to celebrate with the Trumps on this historic return to the White House after 4 years out of that space. Okay, so there's the traditional inaugural trip. Okay, of course, American flags flying there. It's all celebration galore. All right, Solomon, we're talking about immigrants. Let's get on with that so we can get to another issue.
So I said he's not an idle talker, even though he speaks brashly. And a lot of people just don't like the fact that he's not diplomatic in the way he presents matters. He just says it, you know. And so when he was talking about hydroxychloroquine, I think that was just a zeroing in on the use of prophylax. So Professor Femi Babalola and Professor Suya Ajayi, Nigerian trained medical experts who live in the US, were the ones who found the cure for COVID, as it were. And if you do your research now, you will find what we call the peer-reviewed, globally peer-reviewed study of the use of repurposed enter into countries here every now and then. But there's enter into countries here every now and then. But there's what you call vetting. So people enter into your country, you must vet them. Even when they enter illegally, somehow, there must be a way to vet them. You may not even be able to completely knock out the fact that people will enter illegally into your country, because some people will come legally to study, and when their visas expire, some of them will overstay. That person is staying illegally. But you have a situation where the American southern border has become so porous, and there is no proper vetting for those who are coming in. Now, that has very serious implications. Apart from security implications, that has a whole lot of other economic implications. People who want to go to America, who want to find their way to America, are not happy that Donald Trump is going to clamp down on that. America is an immigrant country. People who come to America, and America has a deliberate policy to take in people who are not originally Americans. That is the opportunity that America provides. No president in the United States of America has the power, as it seems, to stop that. But what Donald Trump has consistently talked about that has been taken out of proportion is the fact that he just feels that if you want to enter into the US, you must enter legally. We must know that you are coming, and those who are entering must be vetted. So you can see the situation where a whole gang from another country has invaded in the United States and tormenting people in the United States. And it seems that the government of the day does not seem to be doing, it's not doing any real thing about it. And this is part of the things that determine the outcome of the election that Donald Trump won. And so you have a situation where known terrorists have entered into the United States. People who are on security radar in the United States have evaded security radar, came through the borders, and nobody saw them. People who have committed crimes, who have been caught several times and freed. And then they go on to commit another crime, heinous crimes, actually.
So now we expect to clamp down on them.
Well, that's exactly what he's going to do. It seems that even a lot of Democrats want that to happen, and that's why a lot of Democrats shifted to the Republicans, because they feel unsafe in their own country. America already has a problem, the security problem of gun control and all of that. You now have people who have come from third world countries without control, without vetting, some of them criminals in the places they come from, and they are already in the US. The one that bothers me is that the enemies of the United States would have taken advantage of the porous border, porous southern border, to enter into the United States, create cells, sleeper cells, and waiting for the signals to strike. Once you are in, it is easy to strike and destroy a country from inside.
But I hope this won't take us to that route of playing the blame game at all times. Oh, the Democrats did this, and that's the reason this happened,
It's natural. It's natural. It's the politics of it. Donald Trump wouldn't have won in 2016 if Obama had not done some things, because part of the things that incensed Americans was the promotion of the DEI, the diversity, gender, and all the stuff things, the homosexuality things, the LGBTQ things, and conservative Americans suddenly rose up and said, no, we cannot have any of this continuing. They say economically that Obama did so well. But these moral issues, these intangible things were so important to the countryside Americans, and that brought Trump in 2016. And Trump is back because of what Biden and Kamala failed to do. I mean, it's as simple as that's what happens in politics. That is the politics of it. And so it's also human for people to come around and say, okay, so the reason why we're having this problem is because of this problem, and we're working to tackle it. But you see, if we're having difficulties tackling it, it's because of the magnitude of it that was created by the guys who were leaving or who left.
All right. So he has just 4 years. We hope that, within that space of time.
Well, he can work like Jack Condé, in 4 years.
Yes.
No, it seems to me that nobody has been able to match what Jack Condé did in 4 years, in 8 years in any of the states in this country. Right. Jack Condé did fantastic things in Lagos. You will say that's a state, really, but Lateef Jakonde remains on record. Some of the things that Lateef Jakonde did in Lagos for 4 years, I wonder why it takes, but even in 8 years, some people can't do half of that, in some states.
All right, yeah. Yes, live pictures, outgoing President Joe Biden and his wife, and of course, incoming President Donald Trump and his wife. They are all walking in now to the Capitol, I believe. Okay, they're in the White House. And there go the aides and the journalists for the photo ops. Yeah.
So for me, I always said, when he came in 2016 and he said, America first. Now, for me, in history, that is the empire reclining. Usually, empires come and go, and what happens, the way empires exit, is that another empire will emerge and conquer the reigning empire, and then there will be pockets of violence, and then you lose your sphere of influence. But I think maybe the world is changing a bit from that. So what you have in the case of the Anglo-Saxon Empire, which one leg of which America represents, which is also in some historical, some technical facet, is an extension of the Roman Empire. So you have a situation where the Anglo-Saxon rulers of the world, the new president of America is saying America first. It means, okay, we are rolling back on some of the things we've done globally. What we want to do now is to concentrate internally and deal with the issues internally. Now, the problem is, once you leave a place, once you roll back, somebody will have to fill the vacuum that you have left. So American troops from some of the stations around the world will have to return home. Well, someone will fill in. Someone will have confidence. The Chinese are expanding their territory. The Chinese are modernizing their military. The Chinese are having some technological upper hands. And so what are the Chinese doing? Everywhere European and Western countries, Western corporations are leaving, complaining about the economy, complaining about this. The Chinese are finding it easy to fall in because there's a vacuum. Nature abhors vacuum. And so what you have, for me, my interpretation is that after 250 years, maybe 100 years of dominance, as it were, the Americans are going to recline, as it were, because there is broken down domestic infrastructure. You cannot give out what you don't have. The cup has to be full before you can pour out to give. America probably has given, the Republicans feel that America has given out so much that the American cup is almost becoming empty. So they have to fill it back and see if they could pick themselves up again and rule. But there seems to be a new kid on the block because the Chinese are matching them toe to toe, technology for technology and all of that. The Chinese are moving forward. And I see the Chinese as the next kids on the stage, really. And so everywhere you recline, everywhere the West reclines from, the East, comes in the Chinese coming. Now, when we're talking about the East here, we're not even talking about the entire East as a bloc. We're talking about China, and they are making their presence known in everything. They seem to be restlessly expanding in their technological know-how, as if like a kid who has got a new toy, and once they latch on it, they are on it, they experiment a whole lot of things, and they are doing it with a speed that is higher than what the West, than when the West created, because some of these things were created by the West, and they were the developmental stages when the West, took charge of the world. And so what the West created is what the Chinese are building on, and so the technology is already in existence, and so the Chinese are just taking it a step further, and they are running with so much speed, as if the thing will soon end, as if the world will come to an end.
All right. So it's a special coverage of the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and his vice, J.D. Vance. The ceremony is holding indoors due to harsh weather there. And of course, leaders from across the world, friends, well-wishers, will all be witnessing this historic moment when Donald Trump returns to the White House. He and his family have already gained access alongside the second family, waiting for midday when they would take the oath of office as 47th President and 50th Vice President of the United States.
The Director of the Government Publishing Office, the Honorable Hugh Halpern, the Attending Physician of the United States Congress, Rear Admiral Brian P. Monahan, United States.
All right, so this indoor space has a capacity of about 600. So that's where the guests who have come to celebrate with Donald Trump would be seated as they witness this historic ceremony. Remember that earlier in the day, Donald Trump, alongside others, were at the St. John's Episcopal Church for the church service preceding the inauguration, which is holding indoors for the first time since 1985, when Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president. Of course, that's been attributed to an incident in about 1841, when the then president, under very harsh conditions outside the White House, took the oath of office and gave a 2-hour-long speech. He afterwards developed pneumonia and died about a month later. That's taught some lessons, and the U.S. is moving on with that. There's people gathered looking ahead as the inauguration gets underway. We understand that, after that church service, the incoming president and, his vice are expected to actually hold a private meeting there at the White House, a private meeting before the inauguration takes place. We'll see how it goes. Remember, Donald Trump is set to sign about 100 executive orders on day one, and this is day one of his second 4-year term. Yeah, Solomon. Okay, I think, have we wrapped up conversation on immigration? Because there's another one we'd like us to look into before we end.
Well, part of the things we were talking about,
Yes.
part of the things we were talking about immigration.
Oh, the fact that the Chinese are also really taking over.
So, and then, we talked about technology and empire and recline. But you see, the immigration thing is such an important thing because, look, a lot of people here would, well, there's this one that concerns a lot of Nigerians who prefer to go give birth in the United States, you know, and some of the people were really, really critical against Donald Trump when he came up with his idea. And because under Donald Trump, there was a new rule that was brought in, because people will come maybe like 2 weeks or a month or so, or 3 weeks before they give birth to a child, and then they probably will leave after a month of giving birth to a child, or 2 weeks after giving birth to a child. And then automatically the child becomes, you know, an American citizen. But beyond that, you follow the money. The Americans were also trailing the money, because before you are given a visa to go to the United States, you say you want to give birth to a child, it means you want to go to a hospital. You must have made declarations about the amount of money you are spending, the hospital you are visiting, and they follow the trail to see whether you actually spent that money or not. And so they have made projections about incomes that are going to come in from this sort of medical tourism. When the papers, when the records don't reflect the projected income, then Donald Trump felt there's something that has to be done. And so there was a rule: if you want to come to America, to the United States, to give birth to a child, that's not a problem. So you come in 6 months before and you leave 6 months after. So somehow you still get to spend the money that is with you, because the visa you have does not allow you to work or earn money in the United States. And so you cannot come, then use their free medical services to give birth to a child when you have already told them that you were coming to, you know, you were coming on medical tourism and all of that. So a lot of people didn't like that. But this is what a president, this is what the leader of a country, you may not like the decision, but it's important because it's important for the country. It's important for the economy of the country. And so good leaders may sound brash to you, may not sound diplomatic to you, but good leaders are elected to take the most difficult decisions when they have to be made. And I think that Trump fits into that profile of a leader who takes very difficult decisions, who is also bold and courageous to take some of those decisions, even if the whole world turns against him.
I'm talking about how the whole world is reacting. Let's talk about January 6, 2021, the insurrection. You know, 5 years, or let's say 4 years down the line now, Donald Trump hasn't expressly mentioned that he lost that election, the 2020 election. Well, we know he's back in the White House now. He couldn't actually get in 2021 because of that loss, which he has failed to admit till now. He plans to actually pardon, you know, some persons who have been convicted of being part of that. You call it grievous? You call it what words can I use to describe it now? That act.
Part of the march on the Capitol.
Okay, that's like a calm way.
It's a better way to put it, because the cases there have been subjected to litigation. People have been prosecuted. Even Trump himself has been prosecuted on this. And some of the issues that were raised have fallen like a pack of cards, right? So, and so he cannot also unilaterally pardon people. These things have to go through certain legal proceedings, certain legal consultations. He has his Attorney General who is going to look into this. He has the Department of Justice who are also going to take a look at this. Now, concerning January 6, 2021, there are lots of dimensions and debates to it. I do not want to explicitly go into some of those details so that I'm not accused of being a bit partisan, as it were. But from the legal proceedings we've seen, from the reports we've seen afterwards, we've seen some things that have come up that are not exactly the way this thing was painted ab initio. Well, it is typical with a lot of politicians to be bad losers. If we want to round it up at that level, we could say then maybe Trump was a bad loser. But the fact that Donald Trump has not been able to admit that he lost that election, there must be something as a president and a former president of the United States, and as an incoming president of the United States, that he must be privy to. Because when you look at the sequence of events, the way they have happened, from winning elections in 2016 to losing, in quote, in 2020, to now winning with a landslide in 2024, 25, as you might say, some things are debatable. And then he probably will tell you, I said it, I didn't lose it, I said it, why do you think I have this number? We always had this number. And this is the way he will put it. You know, I always said it, we always had this number. Something went wrong there in 2020. They need to come out and tell us exactly what went wrong. But
will we ever know what went wrong?
Sometimes it might be difficult, but some people will come up with their own dimensions, with their own perspectives of it. There has been some perspectives about the issue about a setup of the situation, even though he was found to have been quoted, you know, saying all sorts of things. But I would have thought that the best way he would have handled it would have been to call his supporters out, to call them to order, to calm the country down, even though the system was working against you. What you do is to soak it in and try to avoid violence.
Because the Capitol riot was quite, you know, for lack of a better word, do you call it shameful? I mean, people had great expectations of the United States, and regardless of what the situation was, they did not expect the citizenry or those few people to degenerate to that level.
To a mob action.
To a mob action, because the democracy was
don't even
regarded
want to call it
in
mob action. They call it something bigger than that, as an insurrection.
Insurrection.
And I think that the use of the term insurrection is the basic labeling thing in order to, you know, build a case around it. As far as I'm concerned, it was a mob action. We will expect that the United States will be much more advanced than that. But, you know, we are not Americans in this sense. And there are some politics that are really, really local that affect the people, and the people know where it touches them and how they react to some of these things. They are not different from us. The only thing you have in places like the United States and Great Britain is that there are systems, security systems, protocols that you put in place to check issues like this. Human beings are human beings everywhere, and human beings, when they feel aggrieved, will react in certain ways. You can see what is happening also in the UK at the moment, the issue of the cultural renaissance and the cultural debates going on in the UK.
Yes.
So they are not different from us. What they have done is that over the years they have built systems. Democracy, representative democracy, is a process. It's a long journey, and it's something you keep learning and learning and learning. And I think that Nigeria would have gone very far if the soldiers of fortune had not interrupted the beautiful democracy we had in 1966. I think that Nigeria would have been one of the most advanced democracies in the world within such short period of time, from 1960 to now, if the military had not interrupted what we had. Because Nigeria as a country, you remember that in most of Africa, Nigeria was the only country that had a negotiated independence. It speaks to the genius of our leaders, those who negotiated Nigeria's independence, the Azikiwes, the Awolowos, and all of that. And every time I go around, I look at the history of Africa and how countries in Africa got independence, the battles they had to fight, the things they had to go through. Nigerian leaders were those who came to the table, who understood what democracy was. Unfortunately, the soldiers messed up all of that.
But now we're making some progress. We're counting down to our 26th year of unbroken democracy as a nation.
And we are learning, even though a bit of impatience is setting in some here, somewhere. But you know, if you really want freedom, you must protect the freedom. And there is no way a military government of any kind will be as good as a civil government. We will make our mistakes, we will learn from them. Britain has done this representative democracy for over 500 years. United States will be 250 years. You know, so they have come very far to get here. And if we don't give ours a chance for all the mistakes we'll make, it is from the mistakes you learn. You can't ask a child not to fall down and get injured. You can't be too protective that a child will not get dirty for the parents to wash, you know, the clothes and all of that. I mean, you have that experience at home and all of that.
And so, because no two democracies are the same, so we have to follow through the process.
And Nigeria is unique, you know, Nigeria is unique. And I think that this government is doing its own bit to try to get us to where we were. Because, see, the principle is a mathematical principle of bearing. In bearing, when you get to a point when you miss your way, you might not know that you actually missed your way, which was what the military did to us. And we thought we did not miss our way. We thought that the military had come to rectify things. The military, whether it was the people who staged the first coup or the counter coup, both of them were in error for whatever reason it was. Both of them were in error, and they took us on a trajectory that was way out of it. And then for us to get back on track from where we left off in 1966, January, bearing dictates, the theory of bearing dictates that you have to come back to where you missed it. You have to come back to where you missed it. The ideologies, the whole of thing. So that's exactly, and this government is doing its bit, because Nigeria is first a federation. All right, and people are complaining about the constitution, complaining about this, oh, it's not reflective of a federation. Nigeria is a federation, and the federating units, the states, are the center of power. So if you understand that about federalism, then you will understand what this administration is trying to do. And that is the way Nigeria was negotiated into existence in the first place. And that's what the Americans have. The states are powerful. The states are powerful. The center of power is there. It's with the states. And this government in Nigeria is also trying to restore us to what proper federalism is about. And that's something you need to appreciate about our country. This is a powerful country. I sit back and I look at what our leaders have done. I'm not talking about the military leaders. The military have done their bit, fighting, you know, defending the country, going on peacekeeping missions, saving Sierra Leone, saving Liberia, going to Sudan, saving South Sudan, and all of that, fighting insurgency at the moment in the country. But the people who are designed to rule are the people themselves, and not the soldiers. Not the soldiers, the politicians, the statesmen. They were the ones who wrote the document, who sat down, the leaders, the traditional leaders, the political leaders, the elites of this country in 1959 sat down and reached an agreement about how Nigeria should operate. Now, when you listen to that history of Nigeria, you will see that there is this similarity with the United States of America, how the Americans came together in all the states, in all the territories, the races, the ethnic groups, they came together and negotiated the existence of the United States of America as a country of free people where there is liberty of worship. The primary thing about America is the liberty of worship and the liberty of expression. You know, these are very important things in the United States. You take away these two things, the American states will collapse. Okay, so in Nigeria, this is one of the things we also modeled after the military had interrupted everything. We came back in 1979 and said, okay, so let us see how we can, because Nigeria is a multi-ethnic society. And because it's a multi-ethnic society, we cannot run the military system, which is a centralization of power. Military will always run a unitary system because it's a command system. But it is when power comes to the people and we take into consideration the ethnic diversities in this country, then we carry everybody along, we take everybody's interest along. And so you see that that is similar with America, because America is a multiracial, multi-ethnic society, and so they created a federation.
All right, Solomon, it's been really great, you know, having this conversation with you. Special coverage of the inauguration of Donald J. Trump as president of the United States, 47th president actually, and of course J.D. Vance as the 50th vice president. I must sincerely appreciate you, Solomon Ajuziogu, senior correspondent and presenter. Thank you. Thank you very much. A whole lot. Yes, and the Promise Afoge is standing by, of course, to bring us something on sports. Promise, a whole lot is going on. You know, Solomon earlier shared with us about the prospect of the Trump administration in the world of sports, especially as we count down to the 2026 World Cup, which will be co-hosted by the US, Canada, and Mexico. So I know you've got your eyes on this, and it's one of the issues you're tracking, right?
Absolutely.
All right, Promise, so you can just take it over from there.
All right, thank you so much, Boss Day. Well, it's been a very huge weekend in sports with plenty of action in the Premier League, the Bundesliga, the Serie A, and all the top European leagues, where Nigerian and African players shine brightly with eye-popping performances for their clubs. Back here in Nigeria, while the stories were not too good for Nigerian clubs on the continent, the country's cricket team is flying the flag of Nigeria super high on the international stage. It promises to be a loaded edition of the program today. This is TVC Sports Desk. Now I am Promise Fogi. Coming up on the program today,